Welcome back to another episode of the Packs What She Said podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Maggie Loney, joined as always by Perry Goldstein, and we have a Week 4 Sunday Night Football preview on deck today. Packers traveling to their second home, AT&T Stadium, to take on the Dallas Cowboys in primetime. Perry, there's so many stories to talk about, right? I think obviously everybody's going to run with the Micah Parsons return, but plenty else for us to dive into this week. But Week 4 already. Kind of crazy.
That's so crazy. That means that we have had, after this weekend, a month of football.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like that at all. Always goes so fast, way too fast. The Packers return to AT&T Stadium. There have been some fantastic memories at AT&T Stadium. Recent memories, not so recent memories. But it always does feel a little bit like a home game in Dallas. This is going to be an important game going into the bye. Do you go into the bye 3-1? Do you go into the bye 2-2? What's the vibe? How do we look? Very important for the Packers to head into the bye, I think, feeling, momentum on the upswing and get healthy. We'll talk about the injuries, but it does feel like a favorable matchup for them to do what they want to do.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the major storyline here is that both teams are really banged up. We'll dive into, like you said, those specific injuries, but the Packers are looking at potentially going into what would have been a really unfavorable bye, probably needing it at this point.
Yeah.
They're kind of limping towards the bye with all the injuries that they have on
Imagine
this
saying
roster.
that week 4.
I know.
God.
But get healthy, take your week off, and then you host a Cincinnati Bengals team that is without Joe Burrow. So, there is a chance for them to kind of bounce back from this gross loss to Cleveland and go into the bye, like you said, with a 3-1 record, 3 wins in the NFC, and build that momentum back.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up this is an NFC game. It does give it a little bit more weight. I know that we're still kind of evaluating the Cowboys, and so far the eval's not going great for them. But it is, regardless, they could turn their season around. It's still early, and any win against an NFC opponent is super duper important.
Yeah, and again, this is a division that they're playing in its entirety. They've got the Giants, they've got the Eagles. They took on the Commanders in week 2 and 1. So everybody in the NFC North is playing everybody in the NFC East. We saw the Bears have a very favorable win on Sunday, obviously against the Cowboys. So given that the Packers offense has just as much juice, Chicago's offense, if not more juice, we are expecting it to be a high-scoring affair for this Packers offense. The Cowboys defense certainly not to the caliber that the Browns defense was on Sunday. So let's dive in.
No.
Where do you want to start?
Well, you mentioned it, so let's start on offense for the Packers. And I think the Bears being last weekend is a really interesting barometer. We were looking at the stats before we started recording, and the Bears put up 385 total yards against this Cowboys defense. They scored 31 points. The yardage was actually even, but and the Cowboys had more time of possession, but the Cowboys also threw 3 interceptions. So I say all that to say, to your point, that the Packers objectively have a much stronger offense than the Bears do. And so if you're looking at what the Bears were able to do against this Cowboys defense, you would feel confident that that's something the Packers can replicate, if not improve upon. They are banged up. They have Trevon Diggs not practicing. They have Deron Bland as a limited participant. That's your 2 starting cornerbacks. And as we also discussed in the before we started recording, they have what looks to be one of the oldest defensive fronts I've ever seen. Dante Fowler Jr., Jadeveon Clowney, Marshawn Nealand, and then, of course, our friend Kenny Clark, who is probably the youngest person on this Cowboys front. All that to say is that I think the youth and speed and energy that the Packers offense has, it's one of their strongest traits, is going to be a big mismatch against this front.
Yeah, if I were still writing 6-packs for Cheesehead TV, one of the things that I would point out this week is the difference on third downs could not be more stark at this point. You've got the Packers, who are second in the league on offense converting third downs almost 50% of the time. They're converting 47% of their attempts there. And the Cowboys defense is 32nd in third downs, very last in the league, allowing 53% of completion. So I think that's where we saw the Packers struggle significantly on Sunday, was to move the ball against the Browns
Yes.
defense. And they should be able to bounce back in a major way against this Cowboys front that has struggled significantly on third downs so far early in the season.
Yeah, it should be a nice reprieve for the offensive line, who had one of the worst performances I've seen in quite a long time, to not have to go up against such a formidable front. And also, I hope to see the run game improve. The Packers' run game was absolutely the star of the show in 2024, and they've certainly struggled through 3 games. I think that's fair to say. It has not been something that they've leaned on. Josh Jacobs is averaging less yards per carry this season than he did last season. So you would like to think that, again, against this defensive front, that Josh Jacobs can kind of get going a little bit more and, of course, open up the rest of the offense when he is gaining 5-6 yards on the ground versus 2-3 and just struggling for every single yard to gain.
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting about this Cowboys team and why they're kind of an enigma is that, when we'll talk about it too when we get to the offensive side of the ball, but like, their offense is putting up a ton of yards. Their defense is allowing a ton of yards. Like, it's kind of a track meet so far this season for the Cowboys. Against the Eagles, they allowed 300 yards, put up 300 yards. Against the Giants, they won it in overtime, put up almost 500 yards. The defense allowed over 500 yards. Then, like you said, against the Bears, they gave up 385 total yards. The Bears, or their offense, put up 396 yards. So just a ton of back and forth up and down the field. And if you want to talk about like gassing a defense, I think that this Packers offense can go toe to toe,
Oh,
point
yeah.
for point, and this defense is just going to be winded pretty early here.
Yeah, we saw it in the first 2 games. I mean, this Packers offense has the capability of scoring on you in 2 plays.
Mhm.
So talk about track meet. I mean, bet. Like, they can do that. I do feel like we're getting inching closer to a Matthew Golden, deep shot. I think
Yeah.
we saw that incredible throw and catch at the end of the game. That could have easily been a touchdown. So he might be key here, especially with some of the injuries, to really continue his ascension and his connection with Jordan Love and really pick on this very banged up and not the best Cowboy secondary.
Yeah, I think kind of stretching the field is going to be the key here for the Packers, and not just in terms of distance, but also, east and west. Like, if you
Mhm.
get some of these end rounds going with Savion Williams, you joked about the age of this Cowboys defensive line, but in the middle of the defense, I think, the Packers are going to win this matchup when it comes to speed. And there's some mismatches there that they can pick on when it comes to that struggling inside linebacking core right now for the Cowboys. They've got Jack Sanborn, they've got Kenneth Murray Jr., not having very good seasons thus far. So, yeah, certainly a nod to the Packers there.
Yeah, I was thinking too, if Tucker Kraft is even a smidgen healthy, how important he'll be to attack the middle of the field and get balls up the seam, because I agree. Like, that is a huge, huge mismatch for this Packers offense. I mean, really, I think that if they can block even marginally better than they did in week 3, the Packers are going to move the ball. Like, they're going to move the ball against this defense. I don't see it being as difficult as week 3.
Absolutely not. So let's shift then. Let's talk about this Packers defense and how they match up against a Cowboys offense that is, playing pretty well. They're putting up points, 24.7 points averaged per game. That's 10th in the league. But the Packers defense has been stingy, still first in the league in points against, averaging only 14.7 points per game. They're putting up a ton of yards, but the points don't necessarily reflect the yardage that they're putting up.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the Packers kind of clamp down. You may be able to move the ball between the numbers, but they've done a really good job, holding teams to field goals or goal line stands. And I think this Cowboys offense just having a really hard time really punching it in this season is going to have an even harder time against this Packers defense. They're going to be ready to tee off against this offensive line. And I know that there was an interview with Micah Parsons saying like Dak is such a mentor and I think it's going to be really hard for me to sack him. And I really don't think that it's going to be that hard to sack him. And if anything, if he doesn't personally want to do it, then you've got Rashawn Gary screaming off the edge and you've got
Who's happy to do
LBN.
it.
Yeah, up the middle. You could probably blitz in Edge Cooper. So there's plenty of bodies who are going to be able to get to Dak Prescott. And when you have, Tyler Booker, their tackle, on injury report, it's just not. It might be a really tough day, and Dak under pressure or Dak in not perfect circumstances will throw you a few. He had 3 turnovers in the Bears game. It's probably a huge reason. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it's a huge reason why the numbers look so lopsided points wise. And he's just been known throughout his career to really throw some weird ones, especially under pressure. So again, we haven't seen a ton of turnovers from this Packers defense. A lot of really good pressure and great stops, but no turnovers. And this might be the game where they finally get a few.
Yeah, and to go back to the points total, I think everything looks lopsided, right? When you play the Giants and you put up 40 points, that is going to skew your total when you have a 3-game sample size, right? That certainly changes things a little bit, but yeah, putting up a ton of yards like we talked about, 4 turnovers like you mentioned already last week on offense, so giveaways a key here, but running the ball effectively. They have over 100, or I guess 119 in week 1 technically, but around 120 yards on the ground in each of their 3 games so far this season. So when it comes to what we've seen from the Packers, they kind of had the clamps on in weeks 1 and 2 against run games, and then opened things up a little bit against Cleveland, allowed 96 yards. Quinshon Judkins having a big day as a rookie. So I think that, that's going to be kind of part of the tale here is, like you said, if they can tee off on Dak Prescott and make this offense one-dimensional, that makes it a little bit easier to shut down. But we do know that the Packers are going to be dealing with some injuries themselves on the defensive side of the ball. So certainly something to look at there as well. Javon Bullard in concussion protocol. So we talked a little bit pre-show about kind of maybe what that looks like. Nate Hobbs played nickel with the Raiders. I don't know if he slides in. Keyshawn Nixon obviously has done it a ton for the Packers in the past. So it could be a different unit out there if Javon Bullard can't clear protocol by Sunday night. And he's been having a really reliable season as a tackler too. So could make a little bit of a difference there in the run game on Sunday night.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see what they do without him. He's had such a great start to the season, so it's hard to imagine that they'll be better off without him. I certainly don't believe that. But to your point about Nate Hobbs, I mean, Keyshawn Nixon was, of course, the Packers slot for a very long time. So there's at least enough versatility for Jeff Hafley to move guys around if he needs to, bring in Carrington Valentine. And then, of course, your back end safeties are not going anywhere. Perfectly capable to kind of use some linebackers to clean up the middle of the field too.
Yeah, and I think that does make a difference. Javonte Williams is having a nice season with the Cowboys thus far, but this is one of the best inside linebacking tandems that the Cowboys are going to go up against with Quay Walker and Edge Cooper. Obviously, they faced a formidable Eagles tandem already this season, but the Giants and the Bears inside linebacking core, I would not say is as good as this Packers core. So I agree with you that turnovers should be aplenty here on Sunday night if the Packers are looking for a way to kind of create some mismatches. And of course, Micah Parsons will have his fair share of opportunities.
Of course. Let's talk about CeeDee Lamb being out.
Okay.
I really think that swings this game a lot. You don't like to think that one player holds that much weight, but I think when you have such a top heavy roster like the Cowboys have, to not have your wide receiver one is going to change what they're going to be able to do. That's hashtag analysis. Anybody on the carrot couch can say that, but we already know he's out. He has a high ankle sprain. He's going to be out for a number of weeks. And Dak has George Pickens, who's looked great. I think he's a great to CeeDee. He's got crazy hands. I mean, we've been seeing him catch some crazy balls. So that the Packers are gonna need to have tight coverage on Pickens. But after that, I mean, Jake Ferguson, Okay, he's a good tight end, but you've already mentioned the running backs. There just aren't that many guys for Dak to throw to. And with CDN, I would feel very differently about the coverage and the mismatch that he brings to this cornerback room, especially with Javon Bullard out. But I feel much different without, one of the best wide receivers in the league isn't playing. It's just going to be an easier day for your defense.
Yeah, and like Kavonte Turpin is a kick return threat. He's got a ton of speed. So he certainly adds a dynamic piece to that offense. He's somebody they'll have to look out for in terms of his ability to get behind the secondary just from a speed standpoint. But yeah, I think George Pickens is a very perfect number 2 as a complement to a wide receiver 1, and seeing him have to emerge into that wide receiver 1 role without CeeDee Lamb, the pressure is going to be on. And he does have 2 touchdowns. He leads the team. Jake Ferguson has a ton of yards, more even than Pickens. But I do think that this is an offense that the Packers defense should be able to handle. And, I know Xavier McKinney joked about being bored. We talked about it, right? Because nobody's throwing the ball to him. I think the secondary will have some opportunities to be really physical with
Yeah.
Ferguson and Pickens.
Yeah, really physical. That's a good way to describe them, period. I mean, they've looked physical
Mhm.
through 3 weeks already. And again, the defense, the Packers lost last week. No fault to the defense. The defense still looks stout as hell. So they're just continuing to trend and like this very championship level defense. It's been really fun to watch.
Yeah. Let's talk about the score, because I know we talked about it's been kind of a track meet, but the score has been kind of wonky for this Cowboys team.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like 14-40. um, I don't know. I mean, will the Packers special teams give them one, or will the Packers special teams just be average this week? Why are they the most wild card out there? I think if the Packers special teams can like play a clean game, the Cowboys will move the ball. They'll put up points. I wouldn't even be surprised if it was in the 20s, just given like what we've seen. I'd like to think it'll be more around the 17 range. That's kind of where I'm thinking. I mean, you said it. The Packers are giving up the least amount of points in the league right now. What's the average? 14 point something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So somewhere around there, 14, 17. I'd like to see the Packers offense put up in the 30s. They need that bounce back game. So my hope is like a 31-14, maybe even more than that. Let's try to beat the Bears. But track meet, it might be high scoring, higher than that.
Yeah, this to me feels like one of those games that could be kind of annoying. Just, I could see the Packers having a similar situation to like the Commanders or the Lions, where you get out to a hot start and then you just let them hang around long enough where you're not like nervous about the outcome of the game, but the score is not necessarily reflective of the dominance,
Mm.
especially with some of the injuries that the Packers have. So as much as I would love to come back here on Monday, right, and talk about a 31-14 kind of victory, it's weird. There's so many injuries that I could see it being like a 27-17 or like a 28-21, where the score might make it seem like it was a closer matchup, but the Packers maintained control of
Right.
the entire series.
It was never in doubt kind
Right.
of feeling. Yep. Okay. Anything we missed in this one? Any
I
other
don't know.
thoughts?
I don't know, like, if missed is the right way to put it, but I know there's been a lot of dialogue already this week about whether or not the Cowboys deserve to give Micah Parsons a tribute, right,
Mm,
as a player coming back. And I would imagine that if it was reversed and it was at Lambeau, that the Packers would do something for Kenny Clark, like even
yeah.
if it was just like a thank you on on the jumbotron.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not necessarily shocked the
Nope.
Cowboys are not doing that, but I do think that, I don't know if Micah would ever come out and say he has a chip on his shoulder, but he certainly has a reason to go into this one with a little bit of a chip stacked.
Extra fire. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. It's very Cowboys of them. I know I said earlier about his comments about, having a hard time with the idea of sacking Dak given their relationship. I do feel like if there's any level of animosity in the stadium towards him, that he's going to even like it's
Tee
just going
off.
to further, right? Like fuel whatever he's feeling. like even though the guy is across from him, like those were his teammates, those are his
Mhm.
boys. I think the noise might impact him in a good way, and his family will be in a booth because in a box because he couldn't get his money back. He bought them one for the season, and then the Cowboys wouldn't refund him. So his whole family's gonna be there.
That I hope the camera pans to them the whole night. Just a bunch of green in a box. Jerryworld is it's going to be interesting. I do think that as much as, you know, he I think he probably did make an effort to stay with the Cowboys, and I think that as much as he wouldn't blame his coworkers, quote unquote, for the decisions, it will come out on the field because the Jerry Jones of it all, like there's animosity, and he has talked before about how he didn't respect some of the business decisions that were made, and disagreed with how some things were handled. And unfortunately, the way for him to settle his disagreements is on the field against his friends and not in like the booth. So
Yeah, totally. Totally.
yeah.
Well, Jerry will be watching. He will be watching what he traded away. And who knows, maybe it'll be like a 3-sack day.
Yeah, Kenny Clark has 1 sack on the season. He is tied with a couple other Cowboys for 1. We obviously know what the Packers front is doing, so I think they'll have a big game, like you said. But lots to watch out for, lots of storylines going into this one, and hopefully the Packers come out of it with a win and some health, knowing that they get to go into the bye before they host a home game in Week 6. So that is all the time that we have for today's show. We'll be back on Monday to talk about it. Since we have a Sunday night game for you, you'll have to wait for the recap until Monday, but enjoy it. Prime time under the lights at AT&T is going to be fun. The Packers historically have had some success there, so hopefully
I
they have more of
have.
that on Sunday. You can find the podcast at PWSS Podcast, at Pax What She Said, Perry at Perry_Goldstein, me at Maggie J. Loney. And yeah, enjoy this one. We're already a quarter into the season.
So
Go
crazy.
Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.